The massive space station, known as Unity-1, hung in the void like a steel flower, its 12 arms stretching out from a central hub that housed the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Each arm represented one of the major species that made up the Galactic Council, and today they were all filled with representatives who thought they held the fate of countless worlds in their hands. Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire adjusted his ceremonial robes as he entered the main council chamber. His purple skin glistened under the artificial lighting, and his 4 arms moved in practiced gestures of authority. As the current council speaker, he had called this emergency session to address what he considered a minor irritation that needed to be quickly resolved. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, a perfect sphere that could accommodate beings from different gravity preferences and atmospheric needs. Floating platforms allowed each species to maintain their comfortable environment while participating in discussions that shaped galactic policy. Today, however, the usual diplomatic calm was replaced by an underlying tension that made even the most experienced politicians uneasy. Fellow council members, Veltar's voice carried clearly through the translation systems that converted his words into hundreds of different languages and communication methods. We have gathered to discuss the recent unpleasantness involving the 3rd planet of the Sol system. A ripple of what might have been laughter came from the Crothan delegation. These insect-like beings had been pushing for aggressive action against Earth for months, their compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights like tiny mirrors. Their representative, Hive Speaker Zach Th, clicked his mandibles in what his species considered amusement. Unpleasantness. Zach Th's mechanical voice translator gave his words an emotionless quality that somehow made them more menacing. 3 of our harvest fleets have gone silent. Completely silent. No distress calls, no final transmissions, nothing. They simply vanished while approaching that primitive world. The Aquarian representative shifted in her water-filled environment suit, her gill slits fluttering with obvious distress. Perhaps there was equipment failure? Solar activity? These things happen in the Outer Rim territories. 3 separate fleets? The voice came from the Thorian delegation, a species that looked remarkably like Earth's mythical devils, complete with horns and red skin. The odds against simultaneous equipment failure are astronomical. Something destroyed our ships. Veltar raised one of his 4 hands for silence. Which brings us to why we're here. Intelligence reports suggest that the humans of Earth have somehow developed military capabilities far beyond what our initial surveys indicated. This is unexpected. The word unexpected carried significant weight in council politics. For over 50,000 years, the Galactic Council had operated under a simple principle. Identify primitive species, classify their worlds as resource-rich targets, and harvest what was needed for the greater good of galactic civilization. It was a system that had worked flawlessly across countless worlds and species. Earth had been classified as a Class D world, meaning its inhabitants were barely past their industrial phase and posed no threat to advanced galactic civilizations. The initial survey, conducted 50 Earth years ago, had shown a species that had just begun to split atoms and had only recently achieved basic spaceflight. By galactic standards, they were infants playing with fire. The humans should not have been capable of resisting our harvest operations, continued Veltar. Our technology is thousands of years more advanced. Our shields can withstand anything they should be capable of producing. Our weapons can reduce their cities to ash from orbit. How does a primitive species destroy ships that have conquered hundreds of worlds? The question hung in the air like a challenge to everything the Council believed about their place in the universe. For beings who had grown comfortable with their technological superiority, the idea that a primitive species could pose any real threat was almost incomprehensible. Zach Th's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of increasing agitation among his kind. Perhaps our initial survey was flawed. Perhaps they have progressed faster than anticipated. 50 years. The Thorian delegate's laugh was harsh. 50 years is barely a heartbeat for technological development. We have species in our own territories that have remained at the same technological level for millennia. Rapid advancement is a myth. Then, explain the missing fleets, demanded the representative from the hegemony of stars, a collective of energy beings that appeared as shifting lights within containment fields. Explain how 3 separate forces, each capable of sterilizing a continent, simply disappeared. The chamber fell silent as each delegate considered the implications. The Galactic Council's power rested on technological supremacy and the fear it generated among lesser species. If word spread that humans had somehow defeated Council forces, it could inspire rebellion across dozens of conquered worlds. Veltar consulted the holographic display that materialized before him. I have requested a full tactical analysis from our military commanders. General Mordak of the Combined Fleet will brief us on the current situation. A new section of the chamber opened, and a massive figure entered the space. General Mordak belonged to the Goliathan species, beings that stood nearly 12 feet tall, and possessed the kind of physical presence that made even other predator species uncomfortable. His scaled hide bore the scars of 100 battles, and his yellow eyes held the cold intelligence of a being who had never known defeat. Honored Council, Mordak's voice rumbled like distant thunder. The situation is more complex than initially reported. We have recovered fragments from one of the lost fleets, and the analysis is disturbing. He activated a holographic projector that filled the center of the chamber with twisted metal and debris. The assembled delegates studied the wreckage with growing concern. This is what remains of the Dominance, a heavy cruiser that should have been invulnerable to anything the humans possessed. Notice the burn patterns on the hull fragments. The energy signatures don't match any known human technology from our surveys. The Aquarian delegate leaned closer to examine the debris. What kind of weapons could cause this damage? That is the question that has our tactical analysts concerned, Mordak replied. The burn patterns suggest focused plasma weapons of extraordinary power. The metal shows signs of being subjected to temperatures exceeding those found in stellar cores. This level of energy manipulation requires technology that should take centuries to develop. Zakth's clicking became more rapid. Are you suggesting these primitives have somehow leaped forward thousands of years in just 50 years? I'm suggesting that our understanding of human technological capability may have been fundamentally flawed from the beginning, Mordak said carefully. There is another possibility that my staff has considered. The chamber waited in tense silence. The humans may have received outside assistance. Another spacefaring race may have provided them with advanced weapons technology. This suggestion sent shock waves through the assembly. The idea that another species might be secretly supporting human resistance implied a level of conspiracy that challenged the Council's control over galactic affairs. Veltar's four hands moved in agitated gestures. Which species would dare? Who would risk Council retaliation to arm primitives? Unknown at this time, Mordak admitted. But the alternative is accepting that humans accomplished impossible technological advancement in an impossibly short time period. The Thorian delegate stood, his red skin flushing darker with anger. This is unacceptable. Regardless of how they acquired these weapons, they have destroyed Council property and killed Council citizens. They must be made an example of before other primitive worlds get similar ideas. Murmurs of agreement came from several delegations. The Council's reputation required swift and decisive action against any species that dared to resist their authority. I agree that action is necessary, said Veltar. But we must be strategic. If humans possess weapons capable of destroying our cruisers, a direct assault could result in significant losses. What do you propose? Asked the hegemony representative. Economic warfare, Veltar replied. We control all major trade routes in this galactic sector. We can isolate their solar system completely. No trade, no communication, no travel. We can strangle their civilization slowly until they surrender. The Crothan delegate clicked his mandibles dismissively. Slow solutions invite further resistance. Strike hard, strike fast, overwhelm them before they can use whatever weapons they possess. And risk losing more ships? More crews? The Aquarian's voice carried clear concern. We don't even understand what we're facing. General Mordak cleared his throat, a sound like grinding stone. There is another factor to consider. Our long-range sensors have detected unusual activity in the Sol system. The humans appear to be constructing something in the asteroid belt between their fourth and fifth planets. Construction of what nature? Veltar asked. Unknown. The energy signatures are masked, but the scale is massive. Whatever they're building is several kilometers in length and appears to incorporate technology that our sensors cannot identify. The implications sent a chill through the assembly. A species that could build unknown technology on such a scale was not the primitive civilization they had expected to harvest. How long until this construction is completed? The Thorian delegate demanded. Intelligence estimates suggest they could finish within local months, possibly weeks. Veltar made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. We cannot allow them to complete whatever weapon system they're building. I hereby authorize the deployment of the Second Battle Fleet to the Sol system. Their orders are to neutralize any human military capability and secure the system for standard harvest operations. The Second Battle Fleet represented the largest military force the Council could deploy without leaving their core territories vulnerable. 200 ships of various classes, including 6 dreadnoughts capable of cracking continents, along with support vessels and specialized assault craft designed for planetary occupation. General Mordak saluted formally. The fleet will depart within the solar day. Estimated arrival at Sol system is 3 local weeks. Excellent, Veltar said with satisfaction. Whatever the humans are planning, whatever weapons they think they possess, they will learn that the Galactic Council is not to be trifled with. As the council session ended and delegates returned to their respective quarters, none of them noticed the small listening device that had been recording every word. The device was of human manufacture, though its technology was advanced enough to escape detection by Council security systems. 3 days later, the recording would reach Earth through communication methods that the Council had never imagined possible, and the response that came back would shatter everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. In the asteroid belt of the Sol system, construction teams worked around the clock on a project that would have terrified the Council if they had understood its true nature. The structure they were building wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement. A declaration that humanity would not go quietly into the night. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the construction command ship, watching as the final components were installed on the massive structure. Her reflection in the viewport showed a woman in her 50s, with graying hair and the kind of steady gaze that came from making life and death decisions for humanity's survival. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, "We've received the intelligence package from our source in the council chambers. They're sending 200 ships." Admiral Chen nodded calmly. "Expected. What's the timeline?" 3 weeks until they reach Sol system perimeter. "More than enough time," she replied. "Signal all construction teams. I want the retribution online and fully operational within 10 days. The tactical officer hesitated. "Ma'am, that's cutting it close. The final systems integration alone should take 2 weeks according to the original schedule." Admiral Chun turned to face her crew, and her smile was not pleasant. "The Galactic Council is about to learn that humans have a gift for adapting our schedules when survival is at stake. Signal Earth Command. Tell them it's time to show these aliens what happens when you threaten our home." In the depths of space, the massive structure continued growing as thousands of workers raced to complete humanity's answer to galactic oppression. The Council thought they were dealing with primitives armed with stolen technology. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. The Second Battle Fleet of the Galactic Council moved through space like a steel avalanche, their formation precise and intimidating. 200 ships of various sizes created a display of military might that had broken the spirit of countless civilizations before they ever fired a shot. At the center of the formation, the command dreadnought Eternal Dominion carried Fleet Admiral Kexdan, a veteran of over 300 planetary conquests. Admiral Kexdan belonged to the Altarian species, beings known throughout the galaxy for their tactical brilliance and ruthless efficiency. His elongated skull housed a brain capable of processing multiple battle scenarios simultaneously, while his 6 arms could operate complex command interfaces with lightning speed. He had never lost a battle, never failed to achieve his objectives, and never encountered a species that could match Council military technology. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we are approaching the edge of the Sol system. Long-range sensors are detecting the human homeworld and several smaller planets." Kexdan studied the tactical display with professional interest. The Sol system appeared remarkably ordinary compared to some of the exotic environments he had conquered. A single star, 8 planets of various sizes, and the usual collection of asteroids and space debris that accumulated around most stellar formations. Any signs of defensive installations? He asked. Negative, sir. We're detecting some industrial activity in the asteroid belt, but no obvious military preparations. The third planet shows standard technological signatures, radio communications, primitive satellite networks, chemical rocket propulsion. Primitive indeed, Kextan mused. Perhaps the missing fleets encountered some kind of natural phenomenon. Solar flares, gravitational anomalies, something that our sensors initially misinterpreted as enemy action. His tactical officer, a Crothan named Jixal, clicked his mandibles uncertainly. Sir, the debris analysis showed clear signs of weapons damage. Analysis can be wrong, Kextan replied. We'll know soon enough. Signal all ships to maintain formation and proceed to optimal orbital bombardment positions around the third planet. The fleet moved deeper into the Sol system like a predator approaching its prey. Their confidence was absolute, built on thousands of years of technological superiority and military success. No primitive species had ever successfully resisted a Council battle fleet. Today would be no different. What they didn't know was that their every movement was being tracked by sensor networks that humanity had spent decades perfecting. Hidden monitoring stations throughout the outer system fed real-time data to Earth's military command, providing exact locations, ship classifications, and tactical capabilities of every vessel in the approaching fleet. On Earth, in a bunker buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps, General Harrison Mitchell watched the alien fleet's approach with grim satisfaction. The man who had once commanded NATO forces was now humanity's supreme military commander, responsible for coordinating Earth's defense against an enemy that outgunned them by every conventional measure. They're following standard Council doctrine, reported Colonel Sarah Park, his chief intelligence officer. Straight-line approach, maximum intimidation factor, complete confidence in their technological superiority. Same arrogance that cost them 3 fleets already, General Mitchell replied. Signal Admiral Chun. Tell her the guests are arriving on schedule. In the asteroid belt, Admiral Chun received the message aboard the command ship overseeing humanity's secret project. The structure they had been building was now complete, though it remained hidden behind a carefully constructed asteroid field that masked its energy signature from long-range sensors. All departments report ready, Admiral, her executive officer announced. The retribution is fully operational. Admiral Chen looked out at the massive construct that represented humanity's best hope for survival. The ship was unlike anything that had ever been built before, incorporating technologies that pushed the boundaries of human understanding. It was 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapons systems that existed nowhere else in human space, and powered by energy sources that the Galactic Council would have considered impossible for a primitive species. Signal all support vessels to withdraw at a safe distance, she ordered, and open a channel to the approaching fleet. It's time to introduce ourselves. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, communication systems suddenly activated without warning. Admiral Kextan's 6 arms moved swiftly across his command interfaces as his crew attempted to determine the source of the incoming transmission. Sir, we're receiving a signal from somewhere in the asteroid belt, his communications officer reported. The transmission is using our own communication protocols. Impossible, Kextan said flatly. They couldn't have acquired our encryption methods. Nevertheless, sir, the signal is coming through clearly. They're requesting to speak with the fleet commander. Kextan hesitated for a moment. Protocol suggested that he should ignore any communication from primitives until after their surrender. But curiosity won out over procedure. Put them through. The main display screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of what appeared to be a human vessel. Standing at the center of the image was a middle-aged woman in a military uniform that Kextan didn't recognize. Her expression was calm, professional, and completely unafraid. I am Admiral Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force, the woman said. You are Fleet Admiral Kextan of the 2nd Battle Fleet, correct? The fact that she knew his name and rank sent a chill through the bridge crew. Kextan's tactical training took over, suppressing his surprise behind a mask of professional authority. I am Admiral Kextan. By order of the Galactic Council, you will surrender your system for immediate harvest operations. Resistance will result in the complete sterilization of your homeworld. Admiral Chen smiled, and there was something predatory in the expression that made Kexdan uncomfortable. Admiral, I'm afraid you're operating under some serious misconceptions about our capabilities. The 3 fleets you lost weren't destroyed by accidents or equipment failures. We killed them. Deliberately. Efficiently. Completely. Impossible. Kexdan replied automatically. Your species lacks the technology to threaten Council vessels. Did we? Chen asked. Tell me, Admiral, what do you know about human history? The question was so unexpected that Kexdan found himself momentarily speechless. Why was this primitive discussing history when facing overwhelming military force? We're a species that has survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, and countless wars that should have destroyed us completely, Chen continued. We've turned every challenge into an opportunity for advancement, every threat into a lesson in survival. Your council made 2 critical mistakes. And those were? Kexdan asked, despite himself. First, you underestimated our adaptability. 50 years ago, your scouts observed a species that had just developed nuclear weapons and basic rocket technology. What they didn't understand was that humans don't progress gradually. We make quantum leaps when survival is at stake. And the second mistake? Admiral Chen's smile became genuinely frightening. You announced your intentions. You gave us 50 years to prepare. 50 years to study the wreckage of the ships your scouts left behind. 50 years to reverse engineer your technology and improve upon it. Kexdan felt the first stirrings of genuine concern. You're claiming to have developed technology superior to the Galactic Councils. I'm not claiming anything, Admiral. I'm about to demonstrate. The connection ended abruptly, leaving Kexdan staring at a blank screen. Around the bridge, his crew waited for orders while trying to process what they had just heard. Sir, his sensor operator announced, I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the asteroid belt. Multiple sources, sir. Very large energy sources. Impossible, Kexdan said, but the word was beginning to lose its meaning. Show me. The tactical display updated to reveal dozens of energy signatures emerging from what had appeared to be empty space. As they watched, the asteroid field began to shift and move, revealing structures that had been hidden beneath carefully crafted camouflage. Sir, his tactical officer's voice was tight with disbelief. Those aren't asteroids. They're ships. Hundreds of them. The human fleet that emerged from hiding was unlike anything in the Council's experience. The ships were sleek, angular constructs that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with a fluid grace that suggested technology far more advanced than anything in Council databases. But it was the massive structure at the center of the formation that truly captured their attention. 5 kilometers of predatory elegance, bristling with weapon systems that radiated energy signatures unlike anything in known galactic technology. Analysis. Kexdan demanded. Unknown technology, sir. The energy readings are off our scales. Whatever those weapons are, they're not in any of our tactical databases. Kexdan's training took over. Regardless of how advanced these weapons appeared, the Council fleet still held numerical superiority. 200 ships against perhaps 50 human vessels. The odds were still in their favor. All ships, assume attack formation. Prepare for orbital bombardment of the 3rd planet. We'll deal with these ships after we've eliminated their home base. The Council fleet began to move toward Earth, their formation shifting to present maximum firepower toward the planet while maintaining defensive postures against the human ships. That's when Admiral Chen demonstrated the third thing the Council had underestimated about humanity, their tactical creativity. Admiral, Kexdan's sensor operator called out, I'm detecting new energy signatures. They're coming from the 3rd planet itself. Earth's surface was erupting with energy discharges as hidden installations revealed themselves. What the Council had assumed was a primitive world was actually a fortress that had been 50 years in the making. Defensive platforms rose from concealed positions on the moon, weapon satellites decloaked throughout Earth's orbital space, and the planet's magnetic field itself began to shift in ways that suggested it had been weaponized. Impossible, Kexdan whispered, but the word held no power anymore. The human fleet moved with precision that spoke of years of training and preparation. They didn't charge forward like young species typically did, when facing superior forces. Instead, they began a complex dance of positioning that slowly surrounded the Council fleet without seeming to do so. "Sir, we're being targeted by multiple weapon systems," his tactical officer reported. "I count over 300 individual targeting solutions focused on our fleet. Return fire. All ships. Engage human vessels with maximum force." The battle that followed lasted exactly 17 minutes and became known throughout the galaxy as the Soul Massacre. Council weapons, designed to overpower primitive defenses, proved ineffective against human shields that bent space itself to deflect incoming fire. Council tactics, perfected over millennia of conquest, crumbled against human strategies that incorporated quantum mechanics and dimensional manipulation. The massive human ship at the center of their formation, the one Admiral Chun called the Retribution, fired a single shot. The weapon that emerged from its primary array was not energy or plasma or antimatter. It was something that Council science had never imagined, a concentrated beam of gravitational force that could crush matter at the molecular level. The Eternal Dominion, pride of the Council fleet, and symbol of their military might, simply collapsed into a sphere of compressed metal and organic matter roughly the size of a basketball. Admiral Kextan had just enough time to realize that his 6,000-year winning streak was about to end before the gravitational beam touched his ship. The rest of the Council fleet lasted another 12 minutes. When it was over, not a single Council vessel remained intact. Some had been vaporized by weapons that manipulated matter at the quantum level. Others had been torn apart by gravity fields that treated space-time like putty. A few had simply vanished, transported by technology that the Council had never dreamed was possible. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the debris field that had once been the most powerful military force in this sector of the galaxy. Around her, the bridge crew maintained professional composure, but she could see the satisfaction in their eyes. "Signal Earth Command," she ordered. "Tell them the second wave has been eliminated, and open a channel to the Galactic Council." Her communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." To the Galactic Council. Chen spoke directly to the recording systems that would carry her message across the galaxy. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force. You have now lost 2 fleets in our system. I want you to understand something very clearly." She paused, making sure her words would be recorded with perfect clarity. "Humanity did not ask for this war. We were content to develop in peace and explore the universe as we saw fit. You chose to threaten our home, our families, our future. You chose to see us as resources to be harvested rather than people with the right to exist." Another pause, and her voice became cold as the space between stars. "That was your mistake. We are not the primitive species you thought you were facing. We are humanity, and we have spent 50 years preparing for this moment. We have studied your technology, learned your tactics, and developed weapons specifically designed to destroy everything you hold dear." She stepped closer to the camera, and her expression promised violence that would echo across the galaxy. "Send more fleets if you want. Send your entire military if it makes you feel better. But understand this. Every ship you send to our system will be destroyed. Every warrior you send against us will die. Every threat you make against our world will be answered with violence so devastating that entire species will tell stories about it for generations." The message ended, and Admiral Chun turned back to her tactical displays. In the distance, Earth hung like a blue jewel in the void, protected now by technology that made it effectively invincible against any force the Council could deploy. But Chen knew this was only the beginning. The Council would not accept defeat easily, and humanity would need to be ready for whatever came next. What she didn't know was that her message would do more than threaten the Council. It would inspire rebellion among hundreds of species that had been living under Council oppression for millennia. The galaxy was about to change in ways that no one could have predicted. The age of human expansion was about to begin. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in an atmosphere of barely controlled panic. For the first time in 6,000 years, representatives arrived at Unity 1 not to discuss conquest and resource allocation, but to address a military defeat so complete that many species were questioning whether the Council could protect them at all. Ambassador Veltar stood before the assembly, his forearms trembling slightly as he prepared to deliver news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The purple-skinned Zephyrian had aged visibly in the weeks since the Sol massacre, his normally pristine robes wrinkled, and his movements lacking their usual confident precision. "Fellow council members," he began, his voice carrying none of its previous authority, "we have received confirmation that the Second Battle Fleet has been completely destroyed. 200 ships, including 6 dreadnoughts, eliminated in 17 minutes. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations that the translation systems struggled to convert into coherent meaning. Representatives from species that had never known military defeat found themselves grappling with concepts their languages barely contained. The Thorian delegate, his red skin flushed darker with rage, slammed his clawed fist against his speaking platform. "This is impossible. No primitive species possesses such capability." "The evidence suggests otherwise," replied General Mordak grimly. The massive Goliathan military commander had arrived with detailed analysis of the battle, and his yellow eyes held the haunted look of a professional soldier who had witnessed the impossible. "Show them," Veltar ordered. The chamber's central holographic system activated, displaying reconstructed footage of the battle that had been assembled from long-range sensor data and the final transmissions of dying ships. The assembled delegates watched in horrified silence as the pride of Council military might was systematically annihilated by human weapons that operated beyond their understanding of physics. "Notice the weapon signatures," General Mordak pointed out as the Eternal Dominion collapsed into a sphere of compressed matter. "The humans appear to have weaponized gravitational forces. This technology should not exist. According to our understanding of scientific development, it should take a species tens of thousands of years to achieve this level of gravitational manipulation." The Crothan delegates' mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. Perhaps they received more advanced assistance than we initially considered. "Another species, more advanced than ourselves." "No," interrupted a new voice. All attention turned to Representative Kelnara of the Information Collective, a species of artificial intelligences that had joined the Council 3 millennia ago. Her holographic form flickered as processing systems worked at maximum capacity. "We have analyzed all available data regarding human technological development," she continued. "Their advancement curve is unprecedented but internally consistent. They did not receive outside assistance. They accomplished this advancement independently." The implications sent shock waves through the assembly. If humans could advance from primitive technology to Council superior weaponry in 50 years, everything the Council believed about technological development was wrong. "How?" the Aquarian representative asked, her voice muffled by her environmental suit. "How does a species achieve impossible advancement in such a short time?" Kelnara's holographic form shifted as she accessed vast databases of information. "The answer lies in human psychology and social structure. Unlike most species, humans do not advance gradually through peaceful technological progression. They make quantum leaps in capability when facing existential threats." "Explain," demanded Veltar. "Human history is a series of catastrophic events followed by rapid advancement. Environmental disasters force adaptation. Wars drive innovation. Resource scarcity creates breakthrough technologies. They are a species that thrives under pressure in ways that our models could not predict." General Mordak nodded grimly. "Which means that by threatening them, we provided the exact motivation they needed to surpass us technologically." The hegemony representative's energy form pulsed with what might have been concern. "What is the current status of human military capability?" "Unknown," Mordak admitted. "After the destruction of the Second Fleet, they have established a quarantine zone around their system. Any probe we send is immediately destroyed by weapons we cannot identify. We have no intelligence on their current activities. Then, we send a larger fleet," the Thorian delegate snarled. "We deploy the Annihilation Armada. 50,000 ships. We reduce their entire system to stellar debris." "With what?" Veltar asked quietly. "The Annihilation Armada was designed to break the defenses of advanced civilizations using technology similar to our own. Human weapons operate on principles we don't understand. How do we defend against gravitational weaponry? How do we counter shields that manipulate spacetime?" The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. The Council's military supremacy was built on technological advantage, but that advantage had evaporated in 17 minutes of impossible warfare. Representative Kelnara spoke again, her artificial voice carrying ominous certainty. There is another factor we must consider. Our defeat at Seoul has been broadcast across the galaxy. 17 species have already requested withdrawal from Council protection agreements. 12 others have demanded renegotiation of resource allocation treaties. Rebellion, whispered the Aquarian delegate. After 6,000 years of stability, our subject species are beginning to rebel. Not just rebellion, Kelnara corrected. Several species have explicitly requested contact with humanity. They wish to negotiate military alliance agreements. Veltar's four hands moved in gestures of despair. The humans are turning our own subjects against us. Actually, a new voice interrupted from the chamber's communication systems. We're not doing anything at all. Every delegate in the chamber froze as they recognized the voice. Admiral Sarachan appeared on the main display, standing on what appeared to be the bridge of the massive ship that had destroyed their fleet. Behind her, human officers worked at stations that incorporated technology the Council had never seen before. How did you access our communication systems? Veltar demanded, his voice cracking with strain. Admiral Chen smiled, and the expression held no warmth whatsoever. The same way we learned your fleet movements, your tactical doctrines, and your political weaknesses. We've been monitoring your communications for decades. There is no Council facility, no military installation, no government complex that we cannot access when we choose to do so. The implications were staggering. If humans could breach Council security at will, then no information was safe, no plan could be kept secret, no strategy could be developed without human knowledge. What do you want? Veltar asked, his authority reduced to a barely audible whisper. Initially, we wanted to be left alone, Chen replied. We were content to develop in our own system and explore space at our own pace. You made that impossible when you decided to harvest our world like we were resources instead of people. Her expression hardened. Now we want something very different. We want you to understand that the age of Council supremacy is over. You've spent thousands of years terrorizing species that couldn't defend themselves. You've harvested worlds, enslaved populations, and committed genocide in the name of galactic stability. She stepped closer to the camera, and her voice carried the promise of violence that had ended 2 fleets. That ends now. Effective immediately, humanity claims protection authority over any species that requests our assistance against Council aggression. Any attempt to harvest, invade, or occupy worlds under human protection will result in the complete destruction of Council forces involved in such operations. You cannot protect the entire galaxy, the Thorian delegate protested. Even with superior weapons, you lack the numbers to enforce such protection across thousands of star systems. Admiral Chen's smile became genuinely terrifying. Do we? Tell me, Counselor, how many ships do you think humanity has built in the last 50 years? The question hung in space like a threat. None of the delegates had considered the possibility that humans had been building fleets while perfecting their weapons technology. We have detected only minimal shipyard activity in your system, General Mordak said carefully. Because you were looking in your system, Chen replied. Did you consider that a species capable of gravitational manipulation might have found ways to hide entire fleets outside normal space-time? Did you think that beings who could manipulate matter at the quantum level might be able to construct ships in ways that don't show up on conventional sensors? The horrible possibility dawned on several delegates simultaneously. If humans had been building fleets using advanced technology while the Council focused on their home system, there was no way to know how many ships they actually possessed. I'll give you a demonstration of human capabilities, Chen continued. Check your long-range sensors. Focus on the Kepler 442 system, approximately 1,200 light-years from your current position. Council sensor operators throughout the chamber worked frantically to comply with her request. When the data came through, the results were impossible to deny. Impossible, breathed General Mordak. That system is showing massive fleet concentrations. Thousands of ships. Now check Wolf 1061, Chen instructed. Then Trappist 1. Then Proxima Centauri. Each system showed the same thing. Massive human fleets that had somehow appeared without detection, positioned at strategic points throughout the galaxy. How? Veltar asked, his voice barely audible. 50 years of preparation, Chen replied. While you assumed we were primitives scratching around on a single world, we were building the infrastructure for galactic expansion. While you focused on maintaining control through intimidation, we were developing technology that makes your entire military obsolete. She paused, letting the implications sink in. The choice facing you is simple. You can accept the new reality and transition to peaceful coexistence with species under human protection, or you can continue your aggressive policies and face the consequences. And those consequences are, the hegemony representative asked. Admiral Chen's expression promised absolutely no mercy. Complete military defeat followed by the systematic dismantling of Council authority throughout the galaxy. We will liberate every world you have oppressed, free every species you have enslaved, and ensure that no being ever again lives in fear of Council harvest operations. The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in stunned silence. Around the galaxy, the message was being broadcast to every species, every world, every being that had lived under Council authority for millennia. Within hours, formal requests for human protection began pouring in from species that had never dared to resist Council authority. The Verdanian communes, the Crystal Singers of Altair 7, the nomad fleets of the Outer Rim, all formally requesting protection from human forces. The Galactic Council, supreme authority in this sector for 6,000 years, found themselves facing a choice between peaceful capitulation or total war against an enemy they could not defeat. In the weeks that followed, 3 more Council fleets would be deployed against human positions. All 3 would be destroyed with the same overwhelming efficiency that had characterized the Soul Massacre. Council authority collapsed system by system as species realized that humanity offered something the Council never had: protection without oppression, cooperation without conquest. The age of galactic empire was ending. The age of human expansion had begun, and it would reshape the galaxy in ways that no one could have imagined. On Earth, in the deep bunkers where humanity's leaders planned their future, General Mitchell watched reports of surrendering Council forces with grim satisfaction. Status report, he requested. 17 star systems have formally requested human protection, Colonel Park reported. Another 34 have expelled Council administrators and declared independence. The Council's ability to maintain order is collapsing rapidly. And their remaining military assets? Intelligence suggests they're consolidating forces around their core systems. They appear to be preparing for a final defensive stand. General Mitchell nodded. Signal Admiral Chun. Tell her it's time to move to Phase 3. What's Phase 3, sir? The general's smile held no warmth at all. We're going to pay the Galactic Council a visit. It's time they learned what happens when you threaten humanity's home. The inner council chambers of the Galactic Authority had never been designed for siege conditions. For 6,000 years, they had served as symbols of unshakable power, with crystalline walls that caught and reflected light from the central star, creating an environment of ethereal beauty that reinforced the Council's claim to divine authority over the galaxy. Now those same chambers hosted desperate war councils as the most powerful beings in the galaxy struggled to comprehend how their civilization was collapsing around them. Supreme Chancellor Vexani of the Celestial Dominion stood at the center of the chamber, her 12-foot frame emanating the kind of presence that had once commanded respect from hundreds of species. The golden energy that typically flowed through the crystalline extensions growing from her skull now flickered weakly, betraying an inner turmoil that she could no longer completely suppress. Status report, she commanded, her voice carrying harmonics that lesser species found hypnotically compelling. General Mordak, now bearing the scars of 3 separate defeats at human hands, approached with data tablets that contained the most comprehensive intelligence analysis in Council history. The massive Goliathan's yellow eyes had lost their predatory gleam, replaced by the hollow stare of a professional warrior who had finally met his match. Supreme Chancellor, the situation has deteriorated beyond our most pessimistic projections. 47 star systems have formally declared independence from Council authority. 19 others have requested human military protection. Council tax revenues have declined by 63%, and Our ability to maintain order in the outer territories has completely collapsed. Chancellor Vexani's energy patterns dimmed further. And our military position? We have lost 8 fleets attempting to re-establish control over rebelling systems. Total casualties exceed 400,000 personnel and over 3,000 ships of various classifications. Human forces have demonstrated the ability to appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning and eliminate Council forces with minimal effort. The other members of the Inner Council absorbed this information with varying degrees of shock and denial. These were beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia, whose technological superiority had been absolute, whose military might had been unquestionable. The idea that a single primitive species could unravel everything they had built was almost incomprehensible. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Zelmak of the Hegemony Collective, we should consider negotiation. The humans have demonstrated that they are willing to accept surrender when offered. Negotiation? The voice belonged to War Master Esike Tan of the Destroyer caste, a species bred specifically for military conquest. We are the Galactic Council. We do not negotiate with primitives. These primitives have systematically destroyed every military force we've sent against them, pointed out Counselor Nexera of the Telepathic Union. Perhaps it's time to acknowledge that our initial assessment was fundamentally flawed. The debate that followed would have been impossible to imagine just months earlier. Species that had dominated the galaxy for millennia were seriously discussing surrender to beings they had classified as suitable only for resource harvesting. Chancellor Vexani raised one crystalline hand for silence. There is another option, one that we have not yet considered. The chamber waited expectantly. The Omega Protocols. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the ambient energy systems seemed to quiet in response to words that had not been spoken in council chambers for over 1,000 years. Supreme Chancellor, General Mordak said carefully, the Omega Protocols have been sealed since the Andromedan incident. The cost of using them cannot exceed the cost of losing everything we have built, Vexani interrupted. If humans want to demonstrate superior technology, we will show them what 6,000 years of galactic supremacy has truly achieved. Counselor Zelmak's energy form pulsed with distress. The Omega weapons could destabilize entire star systems. The collateral damage would be enormous. Better that we rule over ruins than be ruled by primitives, War Master Asatan declared. Activate the Omega Protocols. What the Council didn't know was that their conversation was being monitored by human intelligence systems that had spent decades penetrating every aspect of Council operations. Within minutes of the Omega Protocol decision, the intelligence was being transmitted to human command centers across the galaxy. Admiral Chun received the alert aboard the Retribution as her fleet prepared for the final assault on Council space. The massive ship hung in the void between dimensions, using technology that rendered it undetectable by conventional sensors while maintaining full operational capability. Admiral, her intelligence officer reported, we have confirmation that the Council has authorized use of Omega-class weapons against our forces. Chun studied the intelligence package with professional interest. The Omega weapons represented the Council's ultimate military technology, planet-killing devices that could ignite stellar fusion in planetary cores or collapse matter at the subatomic level. They were weapons of absolute destruction, designed to end conflicts by eliminating all participants. Their capabilities? She asked. Theoretical maximum yield equivalent to inducing supernova events in main sequence stars. Effective range appears to be limited to individual star systems, but the destructive potential is essentially unlimited within that range. Admiral Chen nodded calmly. Signal Earth Command. Tell them the Council has escalated to maximum threat level. Request authorization to implement the Prometheus protocols. Her communications officer hesitated. Ma'am, are you certain? The Prometheus weapons are exactly what we built them for, Chen finished. Signal all fleet commanders. We're moving to final phase operations. It's time to end this war. The human fleets that emerged from dimensional hiding throughout the galaxy represented technology that had been 50 years in development. Ships that existed partially outside normal space-time, weapons that manipulated the fundamental forces of reality, and defensive systems that could survive the destruction of entire star systems. The final battle for galactic supremacy began when Council forces activated their first Omega weapon against human positions in the Tau Ceti system. The weapon functioned exactly as designed, triggering a cascade fusion reaction that should have reduced everything within 12 astronomical units to superheated plasma. Instead, the human ships simply wasn't there when the destruction arrived. They had shifted their entire fleet into a parallel dimension where the Omega weapon's effects couldn't reach them, then emerged seconds later to find the Council forces still positioned exactly where they expected them to be. The retribution was swift and absolute. Human ships unleashed weapons that the Council had never imagined could exist. Reality-warping cannons that erased matter from existence. Temporal displacement fields that aged enemy ships thousands of years in seconds. Quantum entanglement bombs that could destroy a target by destroying its parallel dimension counterpart. Council fleets that had ruled the galaxy for millennia found themselves facing technology that operated beyond their understanding of physics. Shields designed to stop energy weapons proved useless against attacks that bypassed the electromagnetic spectrum entirely. Armor that could resist planetary bombardment crumbled under assault by weapons that attacked the molecular bonds holding matter together. The Battle of Unity 1 lasted 6 hours, and became known throughout the galaxy as the day the impossible became inevitable. The massive space station that had symbolized Council power for 6,000 years was systematically dismantled by human engineering teams who used its own construction technology to turn it into a monument to human victory. Supreme Chancellor Vexani found herself standing in what had once been her private command center, now occupied by human soldiers whose weapons could have vaporized her instantly. The golden energy that had once flowed through her crystalline extensions was completely gone, leaving her looking strangely diminished and fragile. Admiral Chun materialized in the chamber through what appeared to be solid wall, her form briefly translucent before solidifying into normal matter. The technology that allowed such transportation was completely beyond Council understanding. Supreme Chancellor, Chun said formally, I am Admiral Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force. You are now a prisoner of humanity. Vexani looked around at the ruins of her civilization's greatest achievement. Through the shattered crystalline walls, she could see human ships conducting rescue operations for Council survivors, while simultaneously dismantling the military installations that had enforced galactic oppression for millennia. How? She asked quietly. How did a primitive species develop such capabilities? Admiral Chin's expression showed something that might have been sympathy. You made the same mistake that countless oppressors have made throughout history. You assumed that your victims would remain victims forever. She gestured toward the human soldiers efficiently securing the facility. Humanity spent 50 years studying everything we could learn about Council technology, Council tactics, and Council weaknesses. We didn't just develop weapons to match yours. We developed weapons specifically designed to destroy yours. But the advancement required, it should have taken millennia. Perhaps for species that advance gradually during peaceful times, Chin agreed. But humans don't develop gradually when facing extinction. We innovate. We adapt. We overcome. You gave us exactly the motivation we needed to surpass everything you had achieved in 6,000 years. Chancellor Vexani sank into a chair that had once been a throne, symbolizing absolute power. What happens now? Now we rebuild, Chin replied. The age of galactic empire is over. The species you oppressed will govern themselves according to their own values and priorities. The resources you hoarded will be shared according to need rather than concentrated among the powerful. And the Council? Admiral Chin's expression became thoughtful. The individuals who committed war crimes will face justice. The others will be relocated to worlds where they can live peacefully without threatening their neighbors. Your technology will be studied and adapted for peaceful purposes. You're dismantling 6,000 years of civilization. We're dismantling 6,000 years of oppression, Chin corrected. The civilizations you conquered will continue to exist and develop according to their own choices rather than your priorities. News of the Council's defeat spread across the galaxy faster than their former communication networks could carry it. Species that had lived under oppression for millennia found themselves free to develop their own governments, explore their own territories, and pursue their own destinies without fear of harvest operations or resource confiscation. The human fleets that had appeared from seemingly nowhere began the massive task of transition management, helping newly independent worlds establish governments while providing protection from the chaos that typically followed the collapse of galactic empire. Within weeks, the First Galactic Liberation Congress convened with representatives from over 300 species. The gathering was held aboard a human ship in neutral space, with translation systems that allowed beings who had never been permitted to speak freely to finally voice their hopes for the future. Admiral Chun addressed the assembly with words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. "The age of empire is over," she announced. "The age of freedom has begun. Humanity does not seek to replace the Council's authority with our own. We seek to ensure that no species ever again lives in fear of those who claim superiority over them." The response was overwhelming. Species that had never known anything but oppression pledged their support for the new galactic order. Technologies that had been hoarded by the Council were shared freely among all civilizations. Resources that had been concentrated among the powerful were redistributed according to need. The galaxy began to change in ways that had been impossible under Council rule. Scientific advancement accelerated as species collaborated rather than competed. Cultural exchange flourished as beings traveled freely between worlds. Art, literature, and philosophy experienced a renaissance as creativity was no longer suppressed in favor of resource extraction. On Earth, in the same Swiss bunker where the war had been planned, General Mitchell reviewed reports of the transition with quiet satisfaction. "Status of former Council territories?" he asked. "Complete integration proceeding ahead of schedule," Colonel Park reported. 17 former Council species have requested membership in the Galactic Liberation Alliance. Another 34 have established peaceful cooperation agreements. Any resistance? Minimal. Most populations seem genuinely relieved to be free of Council authority. There have been some attempts by former Council loyalists to establish independent strongholds, but our rapid response teams have dealt with those situations. General Mitchell nodded. "And the former Council leadership? War crimes tribunals are proceeding under interspecies judicial oversight. Chancellor Vexani and 12 other senior officials will face trial for genocide, forced relocation, and resource theft on a galactic scale." "Good," Mitchell said quietly. "Justice matters, even for former tyrants." He walked to the bunker's main display, which now showed a galaxy transformed. Where once there had been the rigid hierarchy of Council-controlled space, there was now a vibrant network of independent civilizations working together for mutual benefit. "What's our next priority?" he asked. "Long-term integration and development," Park replied. "Admiral Chun has requested permission to begin exploration beyond our current galactic sector. Preliminary surveys suggest there may be other galactic empires in adjacent regions." General Mitchell smiled. "Other empires means other oppressed populations. Signal Admiral Chun. Tell her that humanity's mission is expanding." The age of human expansion had truly begun, and, across the galaxy, beings who had never known freedom were discovering what it meant to control their own destiny. The Galactic Council was gone, their authority broken, their oppression ended. In its place rose something unprecedented in galactic history, a civilization built on cooperation rather than conquest, justice rather than oppression, freedom rather than fear. The galaxy would never be the same. 5 years had passed since the fall of the Galactic Council, and the galaxy had transformed in ways that even humanity's most optimistic planners had never imagined. The rigid hierarchy that had oppressed countless species for millennia had been replaced by something unprecedented in galactic history, a voluntary alliance of civilizations working together for mutual benefit and protection. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Hope Station, humanity's first permanent deep space facility designed specifically for galactic governance and coordination. Through the massive transparent aluminum viewports, she watched representatives from over 400 species arriving for the 5th Annual Galactic Liberation Congress. The sight never failed to amaze her. Crystalline beings from the Sigma Draconis system shared transport shuttles with gas-based life forms from the Horsehead Nebula. Ancient machine intelligences that predated organic civilization worked alongside young species that had achieved spaceflight only decades ago. The diversity was staggering. and it was all possible because no single authority claimed dominion over the others. Admiral Chun called Director Marcus Webb, the human coordinator for interspecies relations. The Andromedan delegation has arrived. Chun turned from the viewport with genuine excitement. First contact with the Andromedan galaxy had been established 3 years earlier, when human long-range scouts discovered that the neighboring galaxy was also dominated by an oppressive empire similar to the former Galactic Council. The Andromedan Liberation War had lasted 18 months and resulted in the freedom of over 600 species that had been living under totalitarian rule. "How many ships in their convoy?" she asked. 12,000, Webb replied with a grin. "Representatives from every liberated system in Andromeda. They're calling it the largest peaceful gathering in galactic history." Chun nodded with satisfaction. The number represented something that the old Galactic Council could never have imagined: voluntary participation in interspecies cooperation. No one was forced to attend, no one was required to follow decisions made by others, and no one lived in fear of retaliation for disagreement. "Any word from the exploration fleets?" she asked. Admiral Rodriguez reports successful contact with 3 new species in the Magellanic Clouds, Webb replied. "All 3 have requested information about the Galactic Liberation Alliance. Apparently word of our success has spread farther than we realized." The success he referred to was unprecedented in known history. In 5 years, humanity had helped establish peaceful, cooperative governments for over 800 species across 3 galaxies. The former subjects of oppressive empires had become partners in an alliance that shared resources, technology, and knowledge for the benefit of all members. More importantly, they had done it without conquest, without oppression, and without forcing anyone to surrender their cultural identity or political autonomy. Each species governed itself according to its own values while participating in voluntary cooperation for mutual defense and advancement. "Admiral," her communications officer announced, "we're receiving a priority message from Earth Command. It's marked for your personal attention." Chun walked to the secure communications station and activated the quantum encrypted channel that connected Hope Station with Earth's military leadership. The image that appeared showed General Mitchell, now bearing the rank of Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces, speaking from his office in the rebuilt Pentagon. "Sarah," Mitchell said without preamble, "we have a situation developing in the Centaurus sector. Our scouts have made contact with something we haven't seen before." "Another oppressive empire?" Chun asked. "No," Mitchell replied grimly. "Something worse. A species that calls itself the Devourers. They don't conquer civilizations or harvest resources. They consume them. Completely. They strip entire star systems of all matter and energy, leaving nothing but empty space." Chun felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's life support systems. "How advanced are they?" "Unknown. Our scout ship managed to observe them consuming an entire solar system in less than 48 hours. The technology required for that level of matter conversion is beyond anything we've encountered before." "Current threat level?" "They're moving in our general direction, consuming everything in their path. Current estimates suggest they'll reach Alliance territory within 2 years if their advance continues at its current rate." Chun absorbed this information with the calm professionalism that had carried her through the liberation of 3 galaxies. "Do we have any intelligence on their numbers or capabilities?" "Preliminary data suggests a fleet of approximately 50,000 ships, each one capable of planetary-scale matter conversion. They appear to be completely unified in purpose and show no interest in communication or negotiation." "A true extinction threat," Chun observed. "That's our assessment," Mitchell agreed. "I'm authorizing you to begin mobilization of Alliance forces. We may need everything we've built over the last 5 years to handle this threat." The transmission ended, leaving Chun alone with thoughts that carried the weight of galactic survival. The Devourers represented something fundamentally different from previous threats. The Galactic Council had been oppressive but ultimately rational beings who could be negotiated with or defeated through superior strategy and technology. The Devourers appeared to be an existential threat that could only be stopped through overwhelming force. She activated the Alliance Emergency Communication System, sending coded messages to every member species requesting immediate consultation on a threat to galactic survival. Within hours, representatives from hundreds of civilizations were arriving at Hope Station for an unprecedented emergency session. The main assembly chamber had been designed to accommodate the largest gathering in galactic history, but even it struggled to contain the representatives who arrived in response to humanity's call for consultation. Beings who had once been enemies now worked together to address a threat that could destroy everything they had built. Fellow Alliance members, Chen addressed the assembly. Humanity has discovered a threat that endangers every civilization in our local galactic cluster. I am sharing complete intelligence data on the species known as the Devourers. The holographic displays throughout the chamber activated, showing footage that had been purchased with the lives of human scout crews who had risked everything to gather intelligence on the approaching threat. The assembled delegates watched in horrified silence as entire star systems were systematically consumed, leaving nothing but empty void where civilizations had once existed. As you can see, Chen continued, this is not a conventional military threat. The Devourers do not seek conquest or resources. They seek complete consumption of all matter and energy they encounter. Chancellor Velmex of the Crystalline Harmony, a species that had been liberated from council rule and become one of humanity's strongest allies, rose to speak. What are their numbers? What technology do they possess? Intelligence estimates 50,000 ships, each capable of consuming planetary-scale matter in hours. Their technology appears to be based on controlled matter-to-energy conversion on a scale we have never encountered. Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembly as the implications became clear. Even the combined forces of the Alliance had never faced anything on this scale. What do you propose? Asked Representative Kelnara of the Aquatic Communes. Chen's expression became grimly determined. Total mobilization. Every Alliance member contributes whatever military capability they possess. We pool our technologies, our resources, our knowledge, and we build the largest fleet in galactic history. And if that's not enough, called out Hivemind Prime of the collective consciousness, then we develop new technologies, Chen replied. Humanity spent 50 years preparing to face the Galactic Council. The Alliance has 2 years to prepare for the Devourers. We use that time to create weapons and defenses that go beyond anything that has ever existed. The debate that followed lasted for 18 hours and resulted in the most ambitious cooperative project in known history. The Prometheus Defense Initiative would combine the resources and technologies of 800 species to create a fleet and weapon system capable of stopping an extinction-level threat. Species that had been bitter enemies just years before now worked side by side in research facilities that pushed the boundaries of physics and engineering. The Zephyrian mathematical expertise was combined with human innovation, Crothan industrial capacity, Thorian materials science, and hundreds of other specialized capabilities. The result was technology that would have been impossible for any single species to develop. Ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Weapons that could manipulate the fundamental forces that held atoms together. Defensive systems that could survive the destruction of entire star systems. Admiral Chen found herself in command of the largest military force ever assembled, representing a cooperation between species that had never before been imagined. The Alliance fleet numbered over 1 million ships, each one incorporating technologies from dozens of different civilizations. But it wasn't just the ships that made the fleet remarkable. It was the crews. Human tactical officers worked alongside Zephyrian navigators. Crothan engineers collaborated with Thorian weapons specialists. Aquarian communications experts coordinated with crystalline sensor operators. For the first time in galactic history, the full diversity of known intelligence was focused on a single objective. The first engagement with Devourer forces occurred in the Perseus Arm, when Advance Alliance scouts encountered the leading edge of the consumption fleet. The battle lasted 3 hours and provided crucial intelligence about Devourer capabilities and weaknesses. The enemy ships were unlike anything in Alliance databases. Massive, organic-looking constructs that seemed to absorb energy rather than deflect it. Their weapons were matter conversion beams that could reduce anything they touched to constituent particles for immediate consumption. But the Alliance scouts also discovered something crucial. The Devourers were not invincible. Their ships could be damaged by focused gravitational attacks. and their matter conversion process could be disrupted by quantum interference fields. Admiral Chun received the battle report aboard the Alliance flagship Harmony, a ship that represented the pinnacle of cooperative engineering. 5 kilometers of cooperative technology, crewed by beings from 200 different species, and armed with weapons that incorporated the best innovations of every Alliance member. Analysis? She requested. They're powerful, but not unlimited, reported Commander Keltar, a former Council military officer who had become one of humanity's most trusted allies. Their matter conversion requires precise quantum alignment. Disrupt that alignment, and their weapons become significantly less effective. Weakness. They appear to be completely dependent on their conversion technology for both offense and defense. Take that away, and they're vulnerable to conventional attack. Chen nodded thoughtfully. Signal all fleet commanders. We're going to give the Devourers something they haven't encountered before, a fight. The Battle of Sagittarius Prime lasted for 6 days and became the largest military engagement in galactic history. Over 1 million Alliance ships faced 50,000 Devourer vessels in a conflict that would determine the survival of known civilization. The Alliance tactics were unlike anything the Devourers had encountered in their expansion across multiple galaxies. Instead of trying to match their matter conversion technology, Alliance forces used quantum interference fields to disrupt the conversion process while overwhelming them with focused gravitational attacks. The cooperation between Alliance species proved decisive. Zephyrian mathematical precision allowed perfect coordination of quantum interference. Human tactical innovation created strategies that confused and divided Devourer forces. Crothan industrial capacity provided the numbers needed to sustain prolonged engagement. When the battle ended, the Devourer fleet had been completely destroyed. For the first time in their expansion across the universe, they had encountered resistance they could not consume. Admiral Chin stood on the bridge of the Harmony, looking out at a debris field that stretched across several star systems. Around her, crew members from dozens of species worked together to coordinate rescue operations and begin the massive task of reconstruction. Signal Earth Command, she ordered. Tell them the threat has been neutralized. What's our next priority, Admiral? Asked Commander Keltar. Chun smiled as she watched Alliance ships working together to help Devourer survivors who had been freed from the collective that had controlled them for millennia. Even in victory, the Alliance chose cooperation over conquest. Expansion, she replied. The universe is vast, and there are probably other threats out there that we haven't encountered yet. The Alliance needs to be ready. And other oppressed species that could use our help, Commander Keltar added. Exactly, Chun agreed. The mission continues. As Hope Station resumed its role as the center of galactic cooperation, reports began arriving from exploration fleets in distant galaxies. New species requesting assistance. New threats requiring response. New opportunities for the kind of cooperation that had transformed 3 galaxies from oppression to freedom. The age of human expansion had become something greater. The age of cooperative expansion, where the diversity of intelligence was united in purpose but not in identity. Where strength came from voluntary alliance rather than forced subjugation. Where the future was built on the foundation of freedom rather than fear. On Earth, in the gardens that now surrounded the rebuilt Pentagon, General Mitchell read reports of Alliance expansion into distant galaxies with quiet satisfaction. Humanity had achieved something unprecedented. They had become a force for liberation rather than conquest, cooperation rather than domination. The boy who had once watched alien ships threaten his world had become the man who helped free countless worlds from oppression. The species that had been threatened with extinction had become the protectors of galactic freedom. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and dangers that had yet to be discovered. But, for the first time in known history, the beings who explored it did so as partners rather than conquerors, friends rather than enemies, allies rather than oppressors. The age of empire was truly over. The age of freedom had no end in sight. And, in the depths of space, Admiral Chen's fleet prepared for the next phase of expansion, carrying the promise of liberation to beings who had never dared to hope that freedom was possible. The universe was vast, but it was no longer empty of hope.